The stars had always been quiet for humanity. For 300 years, they had spread across 12 worlds, building cities on distant moons and mining asteroids at the edge of their solar system. They had met other species, traded with some, and learned that the galaxy was vast and full of life. But they had also learned something else. They learned that the galaxy was ruled by fear. The Velar Empire had existed for 10,000 years. They had conquered 400 star systems and enslaved dozens of species. Their warships darkened the skies of any world that refused to kneel. And now their eyes had turned toward humanity. Admiral Kang Te stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Use Eternal, watching the scanner display. 12 Velar ships had entered the Sol system without warning. They moved slowly, arrogantly, as if they owned the space they traveled through. Perhaps they believed they did. "Admiral," his communications officer said, "they are hailing us." Kang Te nodded. He was a tall man with gray hair and calm eyes. He had served in the fleet for 40 years, and he had seen many things. But he had never seen ships like these. The Velar vessels were massive, covered in dark armor and glowing weapons. Each one was twice the size of his largest cruiser. The view screen flickered, and a face appeared. It was not human. The Velar had pale blue skin, 4 eyes, and a mouth full of sharp teeth. The creature wore golden armor and looked at Kang Te the way a predator looks at prey. "I am Commander Drex of the Velar Empire," the alien said. "You are the leader of these human ships? I am Admiral Kang Te of the United Earth Fleet. You have entered our space without permission." Commander Drex laughed. It was a cold sound. "Permission? Little species, you do not understand. The Velar Empire does not ask for permission. We take what we want. Your worlds, your resources, your people. All of it now belongs to Emperor Tharn." Kang Te felt anger rise in his chest, but he kept his face calm. "And if we refuse? Then you will be destroyed. You have 30 standard days to surrender all your colonies and submit to the Empire. If you do not, we will burn your worlds to ash and take your children as slaves." Commander Drex smiled, showing all his teeth. "This is not a negotiation. This is your only warning." The screen went dark. For a long moment, no one on the bridge spoke. Then Kang Te turned to his crew. "Send a message to Earth. Tell President Yoon to prepare for war." 3 days later, a diplomatic ship left Earth and traveled to the Velar homeworld. President Yoon Era had decided to try peace first. She sent her best diplomats, along with Dr. Kim Hana, a scientist who had spent her life studying alien civilizations. The Velar homeworld was a dark planet, covered in metal cities and factories that produced weapons of war. The sky was filled with warships, thousands of them, blocking out the light of the sun. Dr. Kim Hana looked out the window of the shuttle and felt a chill run down her spine. She had read about the Velar Empire in old records. They had destroyed entire species. They had erased civilizations from history. And now humanity was their next target. The diplomats were brought before Emperor Tharn himself. He sat on a throne made of black stone, surrounded by guards in golden armor. He was old, even by Velar standards, but his 4 eyes were sharp and cruel. "So," the Emperor said, "these are the humans. The young species that thinks it can stand against us." The lead diplomat stepped forward. "Your Majesty, we come in peace. We wish to discuss terms that would benefit both our peoples. Trade, perhaps, or cultural exchange. There is no need for war." Emperor Tharn waved his hand dismissively. "I have no interest in trade with insects. Your species has 2 choices. Submit and serve or die. There is no third option." "Please," the diplomat said, "we are not your enemies. We have done nothing to threaten your empire." "Your existence threatens us," the Emperor replied. You grow too fast. You spread too quickly. In 1,000 years, you might become a problem. So we will end you now, while you are still weak." He leaned forward on his throne. "Go back to your little world. Tell your leaders what I have said. You have 30 days. The diplomats returned to Earth with heavy hearts. The United Earth Council met in emergency session, and President Yoon Era listened to their reports. Some wanted to surrender. Some wanted to flee to the far edges of the galaxy. But most wanted to fight. Admiral Kong Tae stood before the council. "We have kept secrets from the galaxy," he said. "For 200 years, we have prepared for this day. We hoped it would never come, but we knew it might. We have weapons they have never seen, ships they cannot imagine. If they want a war, we will give them one they will never forget." President Yoon Era nodded slowly. Then she stood and walked to the communications console. "I will send them one final message," she said. "One last chance." She recorded her words carefully. Her voice was calm, but there was steel beneath it. "To Emperor Tharn and the Velar Empire. I am President Yoon Era of the United Earth Government. We have received your ultimatum, and we have made our decision. We do not wish for war. We never have. But understand this. Humanity has faced extinction before. We have survived ice ages that froze our world. We have survived diseases that killed billions. We have survived wars that nearly destroyed us. We survived because we do not surrender. We do not kneel. If you come for us, you will awaken something ancient in our blood, something that has kept us alive through every darkness. This is not a threat. This is a warning. Turn back. Leave us in peace, or face the consequences." The message was sent across the stars to the Velar throne room. Emperor Tharn watched it with his council. When it finished, he laughed. The sound echoed through the great hall, and his courtiers laughed with him. "These humans are amusing," he said. "They think they can frighten us with words. Send the invasion fleet. I want their homeworld burning within 3 months." Only one voice spoke against him. High Counselor Vex, an old advisor who had served 3 emperors, stepped forward. "Your Majesty, perhaps we should reconsider. There is something in that woman's eyes. Something I have not seen before." Emperor Tharn glared at him. "You are a coward, Vex. These humans are nothing. They have 40 ships. We have 3,000. This war is already over." He turned to Commander Drex. "Launch the fleet. Show these humans what happens to species that dare to refuse the Velar Empire." As the council chamber emptied, High Counselor Vex remained behind. He watched the image of President Yoon Era frozen on the screen. He looked into her eyes and saw no fear, only certainty. "We have made a terrible mistake," he whispered to himself, "and we will pay for it." Across the galaxy, the Velar Armada began to move. 3,000 warships carrying millions of soldiers set course for human space. They expected an easy conquest. They expected surrender and slaves. They did not know what was waiting for them. The colony of Nu. Sol was humanity's 3rd largest world. 8 million people lived there, in cities built between green mountains and blue oceans. Children played in parks. Families ate dinner together. Workers returned home from the factories and farms that fed a dozen other colonies. It was a peaceful world, full of hope and dreams. Captain Lee Yuna stood on the bridge of her ship, the Yu's Guardian, and watched the stars. She was young for a captain, only 32 years old, but she had earned her rank through skill and courage. Her fleet was small, only 40 ships, but they were all she had to protect New Sol. The warning came too late. The Velar Armada dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the system. 300 warships, the advance force of the main fleet, appeared like a dark cloud against the stars. Captain Lee Yuna felt her heart stop for a moment, and she began giving orders. All ships, defensive formation. Activate shields. Charge weapons. She opened a channel to the colony below. New Sol, this is Captain Lee. Begin emergency evacuation. Get everyone to the shelters. But she knew the truth. There was no time. There were not enough shelters. And her 40 ships could not stop 300. The battle began at dawn. The Velar ships attacked without mercy. Their weapons cut through human shields like knives through paper. Captain Lee Yuna watched as her ships exploded one by one, their crews dying in the cold darkness of space. She fought back with everything she had. Her guns fired until they overheated. Her missiles flew until her magazines were empty. For 6 hours, they held the line. A U.E.S. Brave rammed a Velar cruiser, destroying both ships. The U.E.S. Hope used its last power to shield a transport ship full of refugees. The U.E.S. Defiant took on 5 enemy vessels alone and destroyed 3 before it fell. These were names that would be remembered. These were heroes who bought precious minutes with their lives. But it was not enough, Captain. Lee Yuna's ship was hit by a massive blast that tore through the hull. Fire and smoke filled the bridge. She heard her crew screaming as the ship broke apart around them. With her last strength, she crawled to an escape pod and launched herself into space as she drifted away. She watched her world burn. The Velar landed their troops in the main cities. They had been ordered to make an example of New Sol, to show humanity what happened to those who resisted. And they followed their orders well. 2 million people died that day. Men, women, children. The Velar did not care. They killed anyone who fought back and captured everyone else. 500,000 humans were put in chains and loaded NTO slave ships. Families were torn apart. Parents watched their children being taken away, screaming and crying, and could do nothing to stop it. The cities burned for 3 days. When the fires finally died, New Sol was silent. The beautiful mountains were covered in ash. The blue oceans were dark with debris. A world that had been full of life was now a graveyard. Commander Drex stood in the ruins of the capital city and smiled. "Send a message to Earth," he told his officers. "Tell them this is what awaits them if they do not surrender. Tell them we are coming." The galaxy watched in silence. Other species saw the images from New Sol and said nothing. The Galactic Council, which claimed to represent all civilized peoples, issued a statement of concern but refused to act. No one wanted to anger the Velar Empire. No one wanted to be next. Humanity stood alone. The news reached Earth 3 days later. President Yoon Era watched the footage in her office, her face pale and her hands shaking. She saw the dead lying in the streets. She saw the chains on the survivors. She saw the flag of New Sol, burned and torn, lying in the mud. Admiral Kong Tae stood beside her. His jaw was tight, and his eyes were cold. "They wanted to break us," he said quietly. "They wanted to show us that resistance is hopeless. And what do we do now?" The president asked before the admiral could answer. Something happened that neither of them expected. The streets outside the government building began to fill with people. Thousands of them at first, then tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands. They came from every part of the city, from every class and every background. They carried signs and flags. They chanted and sang. And their message was clear. They would not surrender. They would not kneel. They would fight. Within hours, recruitment centers across Earth were overwhelmed. Young people, old people, men and women, all of them lined up to join the fleet. Factories that made civilian goods switched to producing weapons. Scientists worked through the night on new technologies. Engineers designed new ships. Everyone who could contribute did. Corporal Choi Minho was one of the millions who enlisted that week. He was 24 years old, a factory worker from a small town. He had never held a weapon in his life. But when he saw the images from New Seoul, something changed inside him. Something hard and cold and determined. "I had a cousin on New Seoul," he told the recruitment officer. "She had 2 kids. I don't know if they're alive or dead. I don't know if they're slaves or ashes. But I know this. I'm going to make them pay. Every single one of them." The officer looked at him for a long moment, then nodded and handed him a uniform. 1 week after the fall of New Seoul, Admiral Kang Tae stood before the largest gathering of humanity in history. Billions watched on screens across 12 worlds. He held the burned flag of New Seoul in his hands, the same flag that had been recovered from the ruins of the capital. His voice was steady, but there was fire in his eyes. "They came to our world," he said. "They killed our people. They took our children. They burned our cities. And they thought this would make us afraid. They thought this would make us surrender." He paused, letting the silence stretch. "They were wrong," the crowd roared. "We did not start this war. We did not want this war. We warned them. We begged them to leave us in peace. But they did not listen. They chose blood. And now they will have it." He raised the burned flag high above his head. "Every ship we build will carry the memory of New Seoul. Every bullet we fire will carry the names of the dead. Every soldier who takes the oath will carry the weight of those who cannot fight. We do not fight for glory. We do not fight for conquest. We fight because surrender is not in our nature. We fight because our children deserve a future free from chains. We fight because we are human, and we will not be broken." The crowd was screaming now, tears streaming down their faces, fists raised in the air. "Prepare the fleet," Admiral Kang Tae said. "We go to war." Far away, in the comfort of his throne room, Emperor Tharn received the reports from New Seoul. He smiled as he read about the destruction, the death, the slaves being transported to his worlds. Everything was going according to plan. "How long until we reach Earth?" he asked Commander Drex. 3 months, Your Majesty. "Perhaps less." "Good. I want to see their faces when their homeworld burns. I want to hear their screams." He did not know that humanity was not screaming. He did not know that humanity was building. He did not know that across 12 worlds, factories were running day and night, producing weapons the galaxy had never seen. He did not know that scientists were activating projects that had been kept secret for 2 centuries. He did not know that he had awakened something he could not stop. The war had begun, and humanity was just getting started. 6 months had passed since the fall of New Seoul. The Velar advance had slowed, then stopped, then begun to reverse. Something was happening that Commander Drex could not explain. Something that made him wake in the night with a feeling of dread he had never known before. The humans were not breaking. They were growing stronger, in a secret facility deep beneath the mountains of Earth. Dr. Kim Hana stood before a room full of military commanders. Behind her, holographic displays showed weapons and ships that looked like something from a dream or a nightmare. "For 200 years, she said, we have prepared for this day. We knew that someday someone would come for us. Someone stronger. Someone older. Someone who thought they could crush us like insects. So we built these." She pressed a button, and the first display lit up. It showed a new type of engine, glowing with blue light. Quantum fold drives. They bend space around the ship, allowing instant travel across star systems. The Velar use conventional faster-than-light engines. It takes them days to cross a single sector. We can do it in seconds. The commanders leaned forward, their eyes wide. The next display showed massive platforms floating in space, surrounded by asteroids. Kinetic bombardment stations. We hid them in asteroid fields across human space. Each one can fire tungsten rods at a fraction of the speed of light. A single rod can destroy a battleship. We have thousands of them. Another display showed clouds of tiny particles swarming around a ship. Nanoswarm defense systems. Billions of microscopic machines that can eat through enemy armor, disable weapons, and protect our ships from incoming fire. Finally, she showed them something that made even Admiral Kong Tae take a step back. It was a weapon unlike anything they had ever seen, a device that seemed to pulse with barely contained energy. "We call it the Sunbreaker," Dr. Kim Hanna said quietly. "It can destabilize a star, causing it to go supernova. We built it as a last resort, a final option if all else failed. I hope we never have to use it." The room was silent for a long moment. Then Admiral Kong Tae spoke. "How soon can we deploy these weapons?" "Most of them are ready now," Dr. Kim Hanna replied. "The quantum fold drives are being installed on our new ships as we speak. The bombardment platforms are armed and waiting. We have been preparing for this war longer than the Velar have known we existed." For the first time in months, Admiral Kang Tai smiled. Across human space, the shipyards were working at full capacity. General Park Dae, the commander of ground forces, visited the orbital construction facilities above Earth and watched in amazement as new warships took shape before his eyes. 50 ships per week, the chief engineer told him. "We started with 40 vessels. In 6 months, we have built over 1,000. And they are better than anything we had before." The new ships were sleek and fast, armed with weapons that could punch through Velar armor. They carried fighters and bombers that could swarm enemy vessels. They were crewed by men and women who had lost friends and family on New Sol, people who had nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. Corporal Choi Min-ho was one of the millions training for the coming battles. He had been a factory worker 6 months ago. Now he was a soldier, hardened by months of brutal training and driven by a cold anger that never faded. He wrote letters home to his parents when he could. "You would not recognize the people here," he wrote. "We come from every colony, every city, every walk of life. There are doctors and farmers, teachers and miners, rich and poor. None of that matters anymore. We are all soldiers now. We all have the same enemy, and we all have the same purpose. When I look into their eyes, I see something I have never seen before. It is not hate. It is not fear. It is determination. Absolute, unbreakable determination. The Velar think they broke us at New Sol. They have no idea what they created." Captain Lee Yuna had survived the Battle of New Sol. She had floated in her escape pod for 3 days before being rescued, half frozen and barely alive. The doctors said she was lucky. She did not feel lucky. She felt guilty. Guilty that she had lived while so many had died. When she was strong enough to leave the hospital, she requested a new command. Admiral Kang Tae gave her the newest and most powerful ship in the fleet, the UES Vengeance. It was twice the size of her old vessel, with weapons that could challenge a Velar battleship. Before she took command, she did something that her crew would never forget. She visited the names of every person who had served under her and died at New Sol. She memorized each one. Then Sage. E had them tattooed on her arm, hundreds of names in tiny letters, running from her wrist to her shoulder. "I carry them with me," she told her new crew when they asked. "Every battle I fight, they fight with me. Every victory I win for them." Her crew loved her from that moment on. They would follow her anywhere, even into the heart of the Velar Empire itself. The humans were not the only ones preparing. In secret meetings on hidden moons and distant stations, representatives from 3 alien species met with human diplomats. These species had been conquered by the Velar centuries ago. Their people lived as slaves, their cultures destroyed, their hope extinguished. But now, for the first time in generations, they saw a chance. "We have intelligence," said the leader of the Korath, a species that had once ruled a great civilization. "Maps of Velar bases, schedules of their patrols, weaknesses in their defenses. We will give you everything we have. And we will give you soldiers," said a representative of the Mech, a race of warriors who had been forced to serve as laborers in Velar mines. "Millions of us are waiting for the signal. When you strike, we will rise. What do you want in return?" The human diplomat asked. The alien leaders looked at each other, then back at the human. "Freedom," they said together. "Just freedom." The alliance was formed in secret. Weapons and information began flowing between hidden bases. On dozens of Velar worlds, enslaved peoples started to prepare for rebellion. For the first time in 10,000 years, the Empire faced an enemy it could not see. Commander Drex began to notice that something was wrong. His patrol fleets were disappearing. Ships that went to investigate human positions never returned. No distress signals, no wreckage, just silence. He brought his concerns to Emperor Tharn. "Your Majesty, I believe we have underestimated the humans. Our advance has stalled. We are losing ships at an alarming rate. I recommend we pause the invasion and gather more intelligence." Emperor Tharn's 4 eyes narrowed with anger. "You recommend we show weakness? You recommend we let these insects think they have a chance? I recommend caution, Your Majesty. Something has changed. The humans we are fighting now are not the same as the ones we attacked 6 months ago. Enough!" The Emperor slammed his fist on his throne. "I will not hear this cowardice. You will continue the advance. You will crush these humans, and you will bring me their leaders in chains." He turned to his guards. "Where is High Counselor Vex? Bring him to me." When the old advisor was brought before the throne, Emperor Tharn pointed at Commander Drex. "Your fellow counselor speaks of retreat, of fear. He says we should be cautious of the humans. What do you say?" High Counselor Vex looked at Commander Drex, then at the Emperor. He knew what answer the Emperor wanted. He also knew what answer was true. "Your Majesty," he said slowly, "I believe Commander Drex is right. The humans are more dangerous than we thought. We should negotiate while we still can." Emperor Tharn's face twisted with rage. "Traitors. Both of you. Cowards and traitors." He gestured to his guards. "Execute Vex. Let his death be a lesson to anyone else who speaks of peace with these vermin." As the guards dragged him away, High Counselor Vex looked back at the Emperor one last time. "You will regret this," he said quietly. "You will regret everything." Then he was gone. Commander Drex stood alone before the throne, his heart's pounding. He knew now that the Emperor was mad. He knew that this war would not end well. But he also knew that he had no choice but to obey. "Continue the advance," the Emperor commanded. "Destroy them all." In the darkness of space, human ships began to move. The counterattack was about to begin. Operation Reckoning began on a quiet morning in the Crimson Nebula. This was the heart of Velar military power, where their main armada gathered to prepare for the final push toward Earth. 2,000 warships floated in formation. Their commanders, confident that victory was only weeks away, they did not know that death was coming for them. Admiral Kang Te stood on the bridge of his new flagship, the UES Retribution. Around him, 800 human warships waited in silence, hidden behind a distant moon. They had traveled here using the quantum fold drives, crossing 3 star systems in seconds rather than days. The Velar had no idea they were there. "All ships, report status. Kang Tae said. One by one, the captains responded. Weapons charged. Shields ready. Crews prepared to die if necessary. Captain Lee Yuna's voice came through last. Vengeance standing by. Give the word, Admiral, and we will show them what humanity can do. Kang Tae looked at the tactical display. 2,000 enemy ships against his 800. The odds were not good. But he had something the Velar did not have. He had surprise. He had better technology. And he had soldiers who would not stop fighting until their hearts stopped beating. All ships, he said, engage Quantum Fold. Take us into the middle of their formation. Space itself seemed to twist and tear. 800 human ships vanished from behind the moon and reappeared inside the Velar Armada. They materialized between the enemy vessels, so close that the Velar could not use their long-range weapons without hitting their own ships. The Battle of the Crimson Nebula had begun. The first minutes were pure chaos. Human ships opened fire at point-blank range, their new weapons tearing through Velar armor. The enemy commanders screamed orders, trying to reorganize their forces, but it was too late. The humans were everywhere, hitting and moving, using their speed and surprise to maximum effect. Captain Lee Yuna led the vengeance, straight toward the largest Velar battleship, a massive vessel called the Conqueror. It was Commander Drex's flagship, the pride of the Empire's fleet. Target their engines, she ordered. I want that ship crippled, not destroyed. I want Drex to watch us win. Her weapons officers obeyed. Precise shots disabled the Conqueror's engines and weapons, leaving it drifting helplessly in space. Commander Drex stood on his bridge, watching in horror as his fleet died around him. How is this possible? He whispered. They were supposed to be weak. They were supposed to be primitive. The battle lasted 18 hours. When it was over, 1,200 Velar ships had been destroyed. Another 400 had surrendered. The rest had fled into deep space. Human losses were heavy, nearly 200 ships, but the victory was absolute. Commander Drex was captured when boarding teams took the Conqueror. He was brought before Admiral Kang Tae in chains. You warned us, Kang Tae said quietly. Your High Counselor warned your Emperor. He did not listen. Commander Drex looked at the human admiral with something like respect. No, he did not. And now we pay the price. The liberation of New Seoul came 2 weeks later. General Park Dae led the ground assault personally. His transport ships descended through the ash-filled sky, landing in the ruins of the capital city. Thousands of human soldiers poured out, their weapons ready, their hearts burning with the need for justice. Corporal Choi Minho was among the first to touch the ground. He had trained for this moment for months. He had dreamed about it. And now he was here, standing on the soil of the world that had been murdered by the Velar. The fighting was brutal. The Velar garrison had fortified the city, building bunkers and defensive positions in the rubble. They fought hard, knowing that surrender might not be an option. But the human soldiers fought harder. They cleared every building, every street, every tunnel. They did not stop. They did not rest. They pushed forward until there was nowhere left for the enemy to hide. When the last Velar position fell, Corporal Minho found himself standing in what had once been a park. The trees were burned. The playground equipment was melted. But somehow, a single flower had survived. Growing through a crack in the concrete, he knelt beside it. And for the first time since the war began, he cried. General Park Dae found him there an hour later. Corporal, the general said gently, we found the mass graves. Thousands of our people, buried in pits outside the city. Minho wiped his eyes and stood. What do we do with the prisoners? We treat them according to the laws of war. We give them food, water, medical care. We do not torture them. We do not execute them. Minho stared at him. After what they did? After everything? After everything, General Parkday said. Because we are not them. We are human. And that means something. When the Velar prisoners were led out of their bunkers, they expected death. They had heard stories about human cruelty, propaganda spread by their own leaders. They were surprised when they were given blankets and clean water. They were shocked when their wounded were treated by human doctors. Word of this reached Commander Drex in his cell aboard the Retribution. They should have executed them, he told his guard. It would have been expected. It would have been understood. Why? The guard asked. Would you have shown us mercy? Commander Drex had no answer. Far away, on dozens of Velar worlds, the slave uprisings began. The Korath rose first, seizing weapons from their guards and taking control of 3 mining colonies. The Mech followed, their warriors breaking free from the factories where they had been forced to work and attacking military installations. Other species joined, some that had been enslaved for so long that they had almost forgotten what freedom felt like. Human Special Forces teams coordinated the rebellions, providing weapons, intelligence, and training. They moved like ghosts through Velar space, appearing and disappearing before the enemy could respond. The Empire was fracturing. Captain Lee Yuna led a strike force deep into Velar territory. Her mission was simple: destroy the enemy's ability to fight. She attacked shipyards where new vessels were being built. She destroyed fuel depots that supplied the fleet. She hit supply convoys and communication stations. The Velar tried to stop her. They sent hunter squadrons to track her down. But every time they found her, she was gone, using the quantum fold drives to escape before they could engage. She was a phantom, a nightmare, a name that Velar officers whispered with fear. After destroying the Empire's largest remaining shipyard, she sent a message that was broadcast across Velar space. This is Captain Lee Yuna of the U's Vengeance. I was at New Sol when your forces attacked. I watched my world burn. I watched my people die. You thought you were teaching us a lesson that day. You were wrong. You were teaching us how to hate. And now we are teaching you what that hate can do. Every ship you lose, every station that burns, every soldier who dies, remember this. You chose this. You could have left us alone. You could have turned back. But you did not. And now there is nowhere in this galaxy where you are safe from us. Emperor Tharn heard the message in his throne room. For the first time, there was fear in his eyes. Bring me solutions, he screamed at his remaining advisors. Bring me victory. But they had none to offer. The war was lost. Everyone could see it now. Everyone except the Emperor himself. In his desperation, he ordered the construction of a final weapon. It was called the World Ender, a massive warhead capable of destroying an entire planet. He would aim it at Earth. He would kill every human in existence. And even if his empire fell, he would have his revenge. If I cannot have victory, he declared, then I will have annihilation. The World Ender was completed in secret. It was loaded onto a ship and launched toward the Sol system, escorted by the last 400 vessels of the Velar Armada. The final battle was coming, and the fate of humanity would be decided in the fires of their own sun, the world. Ender moved through space like a messenger of death. It was the largest weapon ever built by the Velar Empire, a machine designed for one purpose only: to destroy worlds. Around it, 400 warships formed a protective shell, the last of the Empire's great armada. Emperor Tharn had sent everything he had left on this final mission. In 72 hours. Earth would burn. Admiral Kang Te received the news on the bridge of the Retribution. His face did not change, but inside he felt a cold weight settle in his stomach. This was the moment he had feared. This was the enemy's final move. How many ships can we gather? He asked, 1,500, Admiral. Everything we have. Kang Te nodded slowly. 1,500 against 400. The numbers were in their favor, but the world ender changed everything. If even one enemy ship broke through, if the weapon reached Earth, 8 billion people would die. Call them all back, he said. Every ship, every fighter, every captain. We make our stand at Sol. A message went out across human space. From colonies and outposts, from battle zones and patrol routes, ships began racing toward Earth. Captain Lee Yuna brought the vengeance from deep in Velar territory. General Park Day loaded his troops onto transport vessels to help with planetary defense. Dr. Kim Hana prepared the Sunbreaker, hoping she would never have to use it. Corporal Choi Minho was transferred to a boarding team. His commanders had noticed his skill and courage during the liberation of New Sol. Now they needed him for the most dangerous mission of all. If the long-range attacks failed, teams would have to board the world ender and destroy it from inside. You understand this is probably a one-way trip, his commanding officer said. Minho nodded. I understand. I volunteer anyway. He wrote one last letter to his parents that night. By the time you read this, the battle will be over. We will have won, or we will all be dead. I want you to know that I am not afraid. I have seen what the Velar do to the people they conquer. I have seen the graves on New Sol. I would rather die fighting than live as a slave. And if I fall, I will fall knowing that I did everything I could for the people I love. Do not mourn me too long. Live your lives. Be happy. And remember me not as a soldier, but as your son who loved you until the very end. The human fleet gathered at the edge of the Sol system. 1,500 ships, crewed by men and women from every human world. They formed a wall between the incoming enemy and their home. Behind them, Earth hung in space, blue and green, and beautiful. Admiral Kang Te addressed them all. This is the moment, he said. Everything we have fought for, everyone we have lost, it all comes down to this. Behind us is Earth, our home, the place where our species was born. The Velar think they can destroy it. They think they can end us with one weapon, one strike, one act of cowardice. They are wrong. We did not come this far to fail. We did not lose so many to give up now. Today, we show the galaxy what humanity is made of. Today, we win or we die. There is no other option. The response came from every ship. Not in words, but in the sound of weapons charging, shields activating, engines preparing for battle. 1,500 crews ready to fight. 1,500 crews ready to die. The Velar arrived at dawn. 400 ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel, the world ender in the center of their formation. Emperor Tharn had come personally, his throne ship leading the fleet. He wanted to watch Earth burn. He wanted to see the humans scream. What he saw instead was the largest human fleet ever assembled, waiting for him. Attack! He screamed. Destroy them. Clear the path. The two fleets collided in a storm of fire and light. Ships exploded on both sides. Fighters swarmed through the chaos, hunting enemy bombers. Missiles and energy beams crossed in the darkness. It was the largest space battle in galactic history, and it would decide the fate of humanity. Admiral Kang Te commanded from the center of the human line. He directed ships like pieces on a chessboard, filling gaps, reinforcing weak points, pressing advantages. But the Velar were desperate, and desperate enemies fight without fear of death. Slowly, they began to push forward toward Earth. Captain Lee Yuna saw what was happening. The main fleet was holding, but the world ender was still protected. It was still moving toward Earth. If something did not change soon, it would be too late. Admiral, she called over the communication channel, I have an idea, but you are not going to like it. Tell me. I take the vengeance, and a strike force. We punch through their line and disable the World Ender's shields. Once they are down, the boarding teams can land." Kang Tae was silent for a moment. He knew what she was asking. The strike force would be going into the heart of the enemy formation. Most of them would not come back. "Yuna," he said quietly, using her first name for the first time. "Are you sure?" "I have carried the dead with me since New Seoul," she replied. "It is time to set them free." She did not wait for permission. The Vengeance turned toward the enemy line, followed by 50 volunteers. They accelerated to full speed, their weapons blazing, cutting a path through the Velar formation. Ships fell around her. 20 of her 50 were destroyed in the first minutes. But she kept going, driving deeper and deeper into the enemy fleet. The Vengeance took hit after hit, its armor burning, its systems failing one by one. Still she pushed forward. The World Ender was ahead. She could see it now, massive and dark and terrible. Around it, a ring of escort ships tried to stop her. She destroyed 3 of them. Then her weapons failed. She destroyed 2 more by ramming them with her crippled ship. "All power to engines," she ordered. "Take us in." The Vengeance hit the World Ender's main escort carrier at full speed. The collision tore both ships apart in a blinding explosion. The escort carrier was destroyed, and the World Ender's shields flickered and died. "Shields are down." Someone screamed over the communication channel. "The shields are down." Admiral Kang Tae did not hesitate. "All boarding teams, launch now." Corporal Choi Minho's transport raced toward the World Ender. Enemy fire filled the space around them. The ship next to his exploded. The one behind him was torn in half. But his transport made it through, crashing into the surface of the massive weapon. Minho was the first one out. He led his team through the corridors of the World Ender, fighting Velar soldiers at every turn. They lost people with each battle. 6 of them at the first checkpoint. 4 more at the second. By the time they reached the weapon's core, only Minho and 2 others remained. The core was a massive chamber filled with energy. The weapon was already charging, preparing to fire. In minutes, it would launch toward Earth, and nothing would stop it. "Set the charges," Minho ordered. They worked quickly, placing explosives on the power systems that fed the weapon. Enemy soldiers were coming. Minho could hear them in the corridors. There was no time to escape. "Go," he told his 2 remaining squad members. "Get to the transport. I will trigger the charges." "We are not leaving you," one of them said. "That is an order. Someone has to tell our story. Someone has to remember what happened here." They looked at him for a long moment. Then they saluted and ran. Minho waited until he heard their transport launch. Then he looked at the charges, at the core, at the weapon that would have killed everyone he loved. "For New Seoul," he whispered. He pressed the trigger. The World Ender exploded from the inside. The blast was visible across the entire battlefield. The weapon that would have destroyed Earth was gone. The Velar fleet shattered. Without their super weapon, without their purpose, the remaining ships broke and fled. Emperor Tharn's throne ship tried to escape, but Admiral Kang Tae was waiting for him. "Disable their engines," Kang Tae ordered. "I want the Emperor alive." The Emperor was brought to the Retribution's bridge in chains. He was old and broken, his eyes filled with disbelief. His empire was gone. His fleet was destroyed. Everything he had built over his long life had turned to ash. "I do not understand," he said. "You were supposed to be weak. You were supposed to be young and primitive." Admiral Kang Tae looked at him with cold eyes. "We warned you. We gave you every chance to turn back. You did not listen." He turned on the communication screen. Across Velar space, colonies were surrendering. Slave populations were rising up. The empire that had lasted 10,000 years was falling apart in a single day. "Watch," Kang Te said. "Watch what your arrogance has cost your people." Emperor Thorin watched for a long time. Then, without a word, he took a blade from a guard's belt and ended his own life. He died as he had lived, unable to face the consequences of his choices. In the wreckage of the World Ender, rescue teams found something unexpected. A life sign. They dug through the debris and found Corporal Choi Minho, badly wounded but alive. The explosion had thrown him into a section that remained intact. He was unconscious and barely breathing, but he was alive. 3 days later, he woke up in a hospital on Earth. The war was over. Humanity had won. Captain Lee Yuna had survived too. Her escape pod had been launched in the seconds before the Vengeance hit the enemy ship. She was found floating in space, half frozen and close to death, just as she had been after New Sol. But she was alive. Against all odds, she was alive. The galaxy changed after that day. The species that had been enslaved by the Velar were free. New governance formed. Old alliances were made. And humanity, once a small and unknown species, became something else entirely. A year after the war ended, Admiral Kang Te stood before the Galactic Council. Representatives from 100 species watched as he spoke. "We did not want this war," he said. "We begged the Velar to leave us in peace. We warned them what would happen if they attacked. They did not listen, and now their empire is dust." He paused, letting his words sink in. "Let this be remembered. Humanity does not seek conquest. We do not want to rule the galaxy. We want only to live in peace, to raise our children, to build our future. But we will not be conquered. We will not kneel. We offered peace, and the Velar chose blood. The price was theirs to pay." He looked around the chamber at all the alien faces watching him. "Remember this. Remember what happened to the Velar Empire. And ask yourselves, if you ever think of coming for us, if it is worth the price." The galaxy was silent. On Earth, on New Sol, on every human world, people celebrated. They mourned the dead and honored the heroes. Monuments were built. Songs were written. Stories were told. And in a small hospital room, Corporal Choi Minho held his mother's hand and smiled. "I came home," he said. "I promised I would, and I did." Outside the window, the stars were shining. The same stars that humanity had reached for. The same stars they had fought to protect. The same stars that would now remember forever what happened when someone tried to destroy the human race. The Velar had been warned. They had paid the price, and the galaxy would never forget.